Deep in the endless dark of space, where light itself seemed afraid to linger, an alien fleet drifted silently near a long-dead star system. The star was nothing more than a cold husk now, a blackened core surrounded by the ruins of shattered planets. No warmth, no life, nothing but the stillness of a forgotten graveyard. It was the kind of place where even machines felt uneasy. The fleet's scanners swept through the void, mapping the wreckage and measuring radiation levels. For hours they found nothing unusual, just drifting rocks, metal fragments, and the faint echo of ancient battles fought long before their time. But then a reading appeared, a single object, large, moving slowly through the emptiness. At first, the alien commanders dismissed it. A rogue asteroid, perhaps, knocked loose from its orbit ages ago. Or a husk of some forgotten vessel, dragged by invisible tides. Nothing to fear, nothing alive, and yet the scans showed structure, angles, hull plating. A vessel. The bridge of the lead alien cruiser grew tense. Officers leaned closer to their screens. Their voices were hushed, uneasy. It was too large for debris, too deliberate in shape to be just another dead ship. The fleet adjusted course, engines humming as the ships crept toward the object. As they closed the distance, the shadows peeled back. What they saw froze them in place. It was no asteroid. It was a warship, a massive one, its hull blackened and scarred by countless battles. Jagged tears ran across its surface, where weapons had torn into it long ago. Entire sections looked hollowed out, gutted, exposed to the void. Pieces of armor drifted nearby like the bones of some ancient beast shedding its skin. By all logic, it should have been lifeless. But then, lights flickered, tiny sparks like dying stars blinked across its surface. A broken signal, a heartbeat in the dark. The alien commanders leaned forward. Their voices cracked with disbelief. Was it possible? Could anything still live inside that ruin? The scanners surged with new data, energy spikes, faint but unmistakable engines. For a long moment, nothing moved. The alien fleet held its breath, their guns armed but hesitating. And then, with a roar that echoed across the silence of space, the warship's engines came alive. Blue light burst from its stern, pushing the colossal vessel forward. The void trembled with its defiance. The aliens could only stare. This ship, this relic, was human, not just human, but a model thought lost to time. Records claimed ships like this were destroyed centuries ago, hunted down and wiped out in wars so old that even the memory of them was fading. And yet, here it was, alive, moving, defying death itself. On the bridge of the alien flagship, silence ruled. The commanders exchanged nervous glances, their faces pale, their eyes wide. For their people, the name of humanity carried weight. It was a word wrapped in fear and legend. Humans, the ones who refused to die, the ones who would rather burn their worlds than surrender, the ones who, even when cornered, found ways to win. One officer whispered a curse. Another hissed that it had to be a trick, a trap, perhaps some automated drone powered by the last spark of its reactor. But even as they spoke, the truth stared back at them. This was no mindless machine, this was a living warship. The aliens checked their logs, searching for any record of this specific vessel. The closest match was an old battle report. A human fleet, cornered and broken, had fought to the last ship near this system. None had returned. All were believed destroyed, and yet impossibly one had survived. How? No one could answer. The ship itself looked like a ghost, patched together with mismatched parts, armor stripped from fallen enemies, weapons welded back on at strange angles. It was ugly, brutal, and terrifyingly alive. The lead alien commander clenched his jaw. His people prided themselves on order, efficiency, and precision. Yet here was chaos given form, a wreck that should not move, should not fight, yet still refused to die. Fear crept through the fleet, not because of the ship's weapons, which were clearly damaged, not because of its size, though it was colossal. No, they feared because it was human, and humans, in their long history of war, had earned a reputation that no species could erase. They did not quit. They did not surrender. They did not die when they were supposed to. The ship turned slowly, its battered hull glinting in the dim light of the dead star. Its sensors flared awake, sweeping the fleet, as if staring straight into the soul of every alien on board. And in that moment, the aliens felt something primal, the sensation of prey caught in the gaze of a predator. No one spoke. No one breathed. The silence was broken only by the steady, impossible sound of the human warship's engines, dragging it forward through the graveyard of stars. One commander finally whispered what the others were already thinking. This should not be, and yet it was. The paradox of humanity stood before them, too broken to live, yet too stubborn to die. The fleet's weapons armed automatically, targeting systems locking onto the human vessel. Dozens of guns aimed at its fractured hull, ready to erase it from existence, and still, they hesitated, because deep inside every one of them remembered the stories, the wars. The warnings passed down through generations. If you see a human ship where none should exist, run. But they did not run. They could not, so they waited, trembling, as the ghost of humanity's past turned its gaze upon them, alive when it should be dead, moving when it should be still, and promising without a word that the nightmare was only beginning. The alien fleet did not move at first. Rows of warships hung frozen in the black, their engines dim, their weapons armed but trembling on the edge of action. On their bridge decks, commanders barked quiet orders. Scanners pulsed again and again, each sweep confirming the same impossible truth. The human vessel was alive. How? No one could answer. It should have been nothing but bones of metal drifting in silence. Instead, it pulsed with energy, faint, unstable, but unmistakable. The dead ship lived. The aliens had names for human persistence. They had whispered them across centuries of war. The disease that does not die, the fire that will not go out, the shadow that keeps returning. For many species, the stories were old myths. But for the officers on this fleet, staring at the proof before them, the myths suddenly felt very real. The lead commander of the fleet, a tall creature of silver skin and segmented armor, narrowed his eyes. He was not young. He had studied human history, as all officers were forced to. His people had fought the humans before. They had expected them to break quickly, fragile, soft, so small compared to other warrior species. But they had not broken. They had bled, and bled, and bled again. Yet each time they rose. They rebuilt. They found ways to twist even defeat into victory. The humans had earned their reputation with fire and blood. Now one of their warships, scarred by centuries, still moved. The commander felt unease settle into his bones. His officers whispered around him. Perhaps it is unmanned, an echo, a machine, not flesh, a ghost, nothing more. But as they spoke, their own senses betrayed them. The readings were clear, faint life signs, too many to be explained by stray animals or machine ghosts. There was a crew, alive where no one should be. The alien commander silenced his crew with a sharp gesture. His voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed his fear. Do not underestimate them. Never underestimate humans. The human vessel did not broadcast a signal. No challenge, no words, only silence. It drifted with purpose, engines low, movements slow but steady, like a predator conserving strength. The aliens tracked it nervously. Their computers calculated firing solutions. Their weapons could tear it apart in seconds, and yet none dared fire. Why? Because it was human. And humans, when cornered, always had a plan. The commander remembered a tale from his academy days, a small human force on a barren moon, hopelessly outnumbered. The aliens who cornered them had expected surrender. Instead, the humans detonated their own base, taking 3 times their number of enemies with them. The lesson was clear. A desperate human was more dangerous than an army, and this ship, this ghost, looked very desperate indeed. Hours passed. The alien fleet shadowed the human vessel as it drifted through the system. They scanned its weapons. Most were ruined. Plasma turrets melted, missile bays scarred and empty. The ship should have been harmless, and yet, somehow it wasn't. Every movement carried intent. Every flicker of its dying senses seemed like a glare. The humans had no need for words. Their silence was louder than any threat. The alien officers began to feel it. A pressure building slowly, a sense that they were being studied, measured, weighed. The humans did not hail them, because they did not need to. The silence itself was the message. We are still here. We are watching. We are waiting. The longer it lasted, the worse the fear grew. One officer on the alien bridge cracked under the weight of it. His voice shook as he begged the commander to order the fleet to fire. Erase it now. End it before it spreads fear through the others. But the commander hesitated. His eyes locked on the battered vessel. He knew what the others feared to say out loud. What if firing only proved the humans right? What if, even in death, this one ship dragged them all down with it? He ordered caution instead. Hold fire, shadow them, learn. And so the alien fleet followed, their ships trailing like wolves circling an injured beast. Yet deep inside, every alien officer wondered the same thing. If the beast was truly wounded, why had it not already fallen? The silence stretched, pulling their nerves tight as wire, and then faintly movement. Inside the ancient warship, the air was thin, stale and heavy with the scent of burned circuits. Metal walls groaned with every vibration, as though the ship itself was too tired to continue. Lights flickered weakly, some sputtering out, others shining only long enough to remind the crew how broken their home truly was. And yet, life still moved within. In the command deck, men and women sat hunched over failing consoles, their eyes sunken with fatigue, their uniforms torn and patched again and again. Every face carried scars, some on skin, many more in their eyes. They should have been dead long ago. Rations were nearly gone. Water was recycled so many times it tasted of metal. The air scrubbers rattled, one breath away from collapse. Every system had been patched with spare wires and melted scrap. Nothing was new. Nothing was whole. And yet somehow it all held together, just enough to keep them alive. The captain stood at the center, his uniform a shadow of what it once was. His face was worn, his hair grey, but his eyes burned with the same fire that had carried them through every hopeless battle before. He looked at the cracked display before him, where alien ships shimmered like predators in the dark. "They've found us," he said softly. His voice was calm, not fearful. About time. Around him the crew stiffened but did not panic. They had expected this. Every day they had survived. They knew the end would come. And yet not one of them had surrendered to despair, because they were human, and humans, even when broken, still fought. In the engineering bay, sparks rained from overhead as mechanics worked with bleeding hands. Tools long broken were replaced with improvised devices, pipes twisted into wrenches, shards of enemy plating hammered into replacement parts. The great reactor at the ship's heart roared weakly, coughing power through corroded veins of wire. It should have died centuries ago. But the engineers refused to let it. Each time it faltered, they coaxed it back to life, feeding it scraps of metal, rerouting energy from weapons, even from life support. They told jokes as they worked, laughing in the face of their misery. "If this thing blows, at least we'll go out warm," one of them said, grinning as sweat poured down his soot-stained face. Another barked a laugh. "Warm? We'll be Stardust, mate. Best view in the galaxy." Laughter echoed through the broken chamber, defying the silence of the void outside. In the medical bay, the story was the same. Supplies were nearly gone. The few remaining medkits were patched together from rags, scraps, and hope. Soldiers with missing limbs walked with mechanical replacements, built from enemy wreckage. Some bled from wounds that could never fully heal, and yet they lived. They smiled. They carried on. A young officer, no older than 20, sat on her bunk clutching a worn photo. Her family had been gone for years, lost when Earth itself burned in the last war. Yet she held the picture close, as if the faces on the paper gave her strength. She whispered to herself over and over, "I fight so they are not forgotten. I fight so humanity is not forgotten." That was the heart of it. That was why they endured. They did not fight only to survive. They fought so the galaxy would remember them. They fought so no one could erase the story of their people. On the bridge, alarms buzzed faintly, struggling to be heard over the hum of the dying engines. The alien fleet was circling closer now, cautious, watchful. The first officer leaned toward the captain. "Sir, weapons are almost gone. Shields are unstable. We don't have the strength for another battle." The captain's lips curled into a smile. It was not madness, though it looked close. It was the quiet confidence of a man who had stared death down too many times to fear it anymore. "We have strength enough," he said. "So long as we breathe, so long as we fight, we have enough." The first officer swallowed, then nodded. He had learned long ago never to argue with that tone. Across the ship, the crew began to prepare. They tightened straps on broken armor. They polished rifles that had been fired until their barrels glowed. They whispered to one another, not words of fear, but promises. "If I fall, carry my story. If you fall, I'll carry yours. No one dies forgotten." They were tired, yes. Broken, yes. But their spirit was whole, unshaken, and in that spirit lay the paradox the aliens feared. Because a human could fight when logic said they shouldn't. They could win when victory was impossible. They could live when death was certain. The battered ship groaned as its engines pushed harder, turning toward the alien fleet. The crew felt the movement and cheered. They did not know if this would be their final battle. They only knew it would not be their surrender. The captain stared at the display, at the endless swarm of alien warships waiting to destroy them. His hand hovered over the controls, then slammed down with finality. "Signal all decks," he ordered. "Tell them this. Humanity stands." The message carried through the ruined halls, through the rattling vents, through the cracked chambers where men and women held their posts with bleeding hands, and every voice answered the same way, loud, strong, unshaken. "We stand." The ship, scarred and ancient, shuddered with life as its weapon systems flickered awake. Not all worked. Some coughed sparks, others sputtered and died. But enough lit up to cast a glow across the void. The aliens saw it too. Their screens filled with warnings. Their commanders whispered in dread. The ghost ship was not a ghost at all. It was alive, because its crew refused to let it die. Alive, because humans had a spirit no enemy could erase. And as the fleet closed in, the paradox revealed itself once more. The human ship was weaker than ever. And yet, it had never been stronger. The void erupted with light. Alien warships, sleek and curved like blades, broke their silence. Dozens of them moved as one, engines flaring, formations tightening. Their weapons lit up in a storm of fire, lances of plasma, beams of pure energy, and swarms of guided missiles streaking across the darkness. The dead system came alive with war. On the human bridge, alarms screamed. Red lights flared across cracked consoles. The ship shuddered as the first blasts slammed against its weakened shields. Sparks rained down and one console exploded in a burst of smoke. "Shields at 40%, a voice shouted. "They won't hold long," another cried, but no one broke. No one ran. The crew had lived with death too long to fear its arrival now. The captain gripped the rail in front of him, steadying himself against the shaking deck. His voice cut through the chaos like steel. "Target their lead ships. Fire everything we have." The order raced through the ship. Deep inside the battered war machine, gunners slammed fists against frozen panels, forcing stubborn systems awake. Missiles cobbled together from scavenged parts, launched from cracked tubes. Plasma cannons, blackened with age, spat fire one more time. The human ship answered the storm with fire of its own. Explosions blossomed across the void as alien escorts were struck. One enemy destroyer split in half, its glowing core spilling out like molten blood. Another spun away, engines torn to pieces. The aliens reeled, shocked. This ship was supposed to be weak, broken, nearly powerless. Yet its first volley had cut straight into their heart. They regrouped quickly, pressing harder. Their numbers filled the dark. Their beams slashed again and again, ripping chunks from the human hull. Armor boiled away, whole decks depressurized, sucking fire and debris into the void. Screams echoed over comms, cut short as air vanished. The ship bled, but it did not fall. In engineering, sparks blinded the mechanics as conduits blew apart. One was thrown to the floor, skin burned, but he forced himself up, cursing and laughing at once. "Still got juice left in her," he shouted, slamming a breaker closed with his bare hand. "Come on, old girl, show them what we are." The reactor roared in reply, pushing power into failing guns. On the bridge, the first officer called out, "Enemy fleet circling to flank us." The captain's eyes narrowed. A straight fight would mean certain death. He had no illusions about that. But humans had never won by fighting fair. "Bring us into the debris field," he ordered. The helm officer hesitated. The debris field was a graveyard of broken asteroids and shattered ships, spinning violently around the dead star. It was chaos, a place no fleet dared enter. "Sir, navigation will be impossible." "Exactly," the captain cut in. "They want a clean kill. Let's give them a mess instead." The ship turned sharply, engines screaming as they drove into the tangled storm of wreckage. Giant rocks spun past, chunks of metal drifted like blades. Gravity tides twisted every path. To follow would be madness. The aliens followed anyway. They had the numbers, the power, the speed. They thought they could corner their prey even in chaos. But chaos was where humans thrived. The human gunners waited until the aliens flew too close to the debris. Then they fired, Not at the ships, but at the wreckage itself. A single blast tore apart an asteroid, sending its shards crashing through enemy lines. A destroyer was gutted instantly, speared by stone and steel. The aliens tried to adjust, but every move became a trap. A missile bank exploded, not aimed at a ship, but at a massive hull fragment drifting between them. The blast shoved the wreckage into the path of 3 alien cruisers, smashing them aside like toys. "Ha! Did you see that?" a gunner roared, slamming his fist against the console. "Like bowling pins." Laughter echoed across the comms, ragged but fierce. The aliens fired harder, desperate to break free of the madness. Their beams cut through wreckage, through rocks, through the battlefield itself. The battlefield drifted in silence once more. Alien wreckage floated in all directions, glowing faintly with heat, spilling sparks and gases into the void. Shattered ships spun slowly, their broken hulls reflecting the pale light of the dead star. Among the debris, only one vessel still moved, scarred, battered, but alive. The human warship. It limped forward, its engines flickering, its shields barely a shimmer of light. By every measure of logic, it should have been destroyed. No ship could take such punishment and endure. No crew could suffer such losses and still fight. And yet there it was. The alien fleet, still 3 times its size, hovered at a distance. Their weapons were ready, their numbers overwhelming, but not a single commander dared to advance. They had seen too much. Too many of their brothers torn apart. Too many ships turned into fire by a foe that should not exist. On their bridge decks, silence stretched. Officers exchanged nervous glances. Claws tapped consoles. Some whispered. Others simply stared, their throats tight with fear. "What are they?" one muttered, unable to stop the tremor in his voice. Another whispered back, "Humans. The stubborn ones, the cursed ones." Word spread quickly through the fleet. Crews spoke over comms in hushed voices, passing rumors from ship to ship. Every story grew larger than the last. Some swore they saw the human vessel heal itself, as if it were alive. Others claimed the humans laughed as they died, cheering even as their ship burned. Fear traveled faster than light. Within hours, the story escaped the fleet itself. Distress signals and tactical updates reached command networks far beyond the system. Messages carried warnings, desperate and frantic. The humans endure. The ghost ship fights still. Beware the paradox. Across the galaxy, alien officers read the reports with disbelief. Some scoffed, some laughed nervously. But others, the veterans who had seen humanity in battle before, grew pale. They remembered their own stories, memories buried deep, tales of human defiance that had never quite faded. And now, proof had returned. In distant starports, whispers spread like wildfire. Merchants, smugglers, and mercenaries repeated the tale. A lone human ship, centuries old, rising from the dead to slay fleets. They called it the Revenant, the Immortal, the paradox of flesh and steel. Each retelling twisted the truth, adding new details, but the heart of the story stayed the same. Humans could not be killed. On the alien flagship still orbiting the wreck field, the commander sat alone in his chamber. His silver hands trembled as he replayed the battle footage. Again and again he watched the human vessel tear through his fleet, refusing to fall. It made no sense. Statistically, mathematically, the humans should have been annihilated in the first volley. Yet numbers and logic meant nothing in the face of what he had seen. He thought of the academy lectures, the warnings delivered by old instructors with haunted eyes. If you corner them, expect fire. If you starve them, expect cunning. If you think them defeated, expect the knife in your back. Humans cannot be measured as you measure others. They are paradox. At the time, he had dismissed those lessons as exaggeration, ancient propaganda from a war long past. Now he knew better. His people would not sleep easily tonight. Meanwhile, aboard the human ship, the crew worked in grim silence. They patched hull breaches with melted scrap. They dragged the wounded to the failing medical bay. They buried their dead in the only way space allowed, sealed in airlocks, drifted into the void. But as each body slipped into darkness, the crew did not weep. They saluted. They stood tall. Because they knew that every death carried weight. Every life lost burned their spirit brighter, and that spirit was already spreading beyond their ship. In the days that followed, more alien fleets began to move cautiously. Scanners picked up signals of the human vessel, limping but alive. leaving trails of battle behind. Commanders argued whether to attack again. Some demanded overwhelming force, entire armadas to crush one broken ship. Others refused, saying it was not worth the cost, not worth feeding the legend further because every engagement, win or lose, only seemed to prove the paradox true. And so fear spread. Not from the humans' guns, not from their numbers, which were nearly gone, but from their defiance, their refusal to quit, their silence that spoke louder than any war cry. In alien marketplaces, whispers became songs. Children of species that had never even seen a human spoke in awe. They do not fall. They do not break. They cannot be conquered. The myth grew faster than any fleet could stop. Back on the human vessel, the captain stood at the cracked viewport, staring at the distant enemy ships that still refused to approach. His face was grim, but a spark of pride lit his eyes. He could not hear the whispers spreading across the galaxy. But he knew. He had seen it before. Fear was the oldest weapon humanity had ever wielded, and it was always the sharpest. The first officer joined him, his uniform bloodied and burned. "They'll come again, sir." "Stronger next time." The captain nodded slowly. "Yes, they'll come. And when they do—" He let the words hang unfinished. He did not need to say them. Every man and woman aboard the ship already knew they would stand, because that was humanity's way. And outside, in the endless dark, alien fleets waited, some in fear, some in fury, all with one truth gnawing at their hearts: the paradox lived, and the galaxy could never unlearn its name. The galaxy held its breath. For weeks, the story of the human paradox spread across the stars. Fleets hesitated. Commanders doubted. Armies argued. The humans, with only a single battered ship, had shaken the courage of empires. But fear could only delay the inevitable. Now, in the void between two dying suns, the largest alien armada yet gathered. Hundreds of ships, sleek and bristling with weapons, moved into formation. Their hulls gleamed like polished blades. Their commanders spoke in harsh voices, trying to hide the unease gnawing at their hearts. "This ends now," one admiral declared to his fleet. "The legend dies here." The human ship, scarred and limping, faced them alone. Its shields barely flickered. Its weapons hummed with tired energy. Inside, the crew worked silently, their hands blistered, their uniforms torn, their faces lined with exhaustion. They knew the truth. They could not win. Not against this. Not against an enemy that outnumbered them 100-1. But winning was never the point. The captain stood at the center of the bridge, his hand gripping the railing to steady himself against the shuddering deck. His voice was calm, steady, almost cold. "Prepare everything we have left. Engines, weapons, core." The first officer frowned. "Sir, the core won't survive if we push it that far." The captain's eyes narrowed, sharp as steel. "Neither will we." "That isn't the question." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member turned to their stations, their movements precise, unflinching. Not a single protest, not a single word of fear. They all knew what they were preparing to do. The aliens advanced. Sensors screamed as enemy ships locked weapons. Hundreds of targeting beams lanced across the void, pinning the human vessel like prey. On every alien bridge, officers waited for the order to fire. Yet hesitation lingered. They remembered the stories. They remembered the other fleets that had thought victory certain. They remembered how quickly those certainties had turned to wreckage and flame. Still, the admiral gave the command: fire. The void erupted. Lances of plasma and streams of missiles rained down. The human ship shook under the assault. Hull plates tore away. Fires erupted across decks. Crew members fell, but others rushed to fill their places without hesitation. And still the ship lived. Smoke filled the bridge. Sparks rained from broken consoles. The first officer shouted over the noise, "Weapons failing! Shields collapsing!" The captain's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Lock the core. Route all remaining power to engines." The crew froze. They understood. They had known this might come. Their eyes met across the ruined bridge, and in that moment something unspoken passed between them. Their unity, fierce and unbreakable. They did not fear death, they feared only defeat, and so they obeyed. The human ship turned, engines roaring with impossible strength. Power surged through its frame far beyond safe limits. Alarms wailed as the core began to overheat, glowing brighter and brighter. a miniature star burning inside its heart. On the alien flagships, panic spread. "They're charging us." "Impossible. Their ship is breaking apart." "No, look at the core." "They mean to—" The realization struck too late. The human warship, broken and burning, hurled itself straight at the enemy dreadnought, the largest vessel in the fleet, the symbol of their power, the heart of their formation. Every alien ship fired desperately, pouring fire into the advancing wreck, but it did not stop. Each blast only tore away more steel, revealing the blazing light within, the furious heart that refused to die. On the bridge of the dreadnought, the alien admiral's voice broke. "Stop them! Stop them!" But nothing could. The human vessel slammed into the dreadnought's hull. For a heartbeat, the void was silent. Then the core erupted. A white firestorm engulfed the battlefield. The shockwave tore through ships, ripping apart formations, flinging wreckage into the void. The dreadnought split in half, its mighty frame broken like glass. Dozens of alien ships vanished in the explosion, consumed by the light. And at the center, where the human vessel had once been, nothing remained but a brilliant, expanding cloud of fire. Silence followed. Silence heavy and endless. When the light finally faded, the survivors stared in horror. The battlefield was quiet. Ashes drifted where ships had once stood. Broken hulls spun endlessly, glinting like black glass in the faint light of the stars. Where the human vessel had made its final charge, only a scar in space remained, a great expanding cloud of glowing debris. The dreadnought was gone. The mighty fleet shattered, and the humans gone with it. Yet the silence did not feel like victory. On the surviving alien bridges, commanders stared at their screens, trembling. They saw the wreckage of their greatest armada and felt no triumph. Only dread, because they understood what had happened. The humans had chosen to die on their own terms. They had chosen destruction, not surrender. And in that choice, they had turned defeat into legend. Whispers filled the void. Soldiers muttered among themselves. Officers shared uneasy glances. Hand on every frequency, across every ship, the word spread. They cannot be broken. Even in death they fight. The paradox lives. The alien admiral, who had sworn to end the legend, slumped in his command chair. His eyes were hollow, his voice barely a whisper. "What are we fighting?" he muttered. "No species should endure this. No species should choose such an end." But the answer was already known. They were fighting humans, and humans did not follow the rules of fear or logic or even survival. They were something else entirely. Weeks later, the story reached the far edges of the galaxy. Merchants told it in crowded stations. Miners repeated it in the deep tunnels of asteroid belts. Smugglers carried it from system to system, laughing nervously as they swore the tale was true. Children of alien races, many who had never seen a human, spoke of them in whispers before sleep. They imagined steel ships that would not die, crews who laughed in the face of death, captains who turned destruction into firestorms. The story grew with every retelling. Details twisted, became grander, sharper, impossible. Some claimed the human ship was already dead when it charged, crewed by ghosts. Others said it was no single ship at all, but the spirit of all humanity bound into one vessel. Some even swore the humans had found a way to live inside the explosion itself, waiting in the fire to strike again. But every version carried the same truth. Humans were not like others. They were paradox. Back on Earth, deep within humanity's homeworld, the signal of the last battle finally reached listening posts. Technicians played the fragments of intercepted alien comms, their voices frantic, terrified. The recording spread quickly through human command, then through civilian channels. The people of Earth listened. They heard the aliens speak in fear, heard them whisper of humanity's defiance, of the ghost ship, of the paradox, and they smiled. For centuries, humanity had feared they were too small, too weak, too divided to survive among the stars. Now they knew the truth. Even if a single ship stood alone, even if outnumbered 100 to 1, humanity would endure. Not because of technology, not because of strength, but because of something deeper. Something no enemy could measure, predict, or break. Their will. Across the galaxy, alien rulers gathered in secret councils. They spoke in hushed tones, uneasy shadows on their faces. If they rise again, we will never contain them. They are too few now. Perhaps extinction will claim them. Perhaps. But even if it does, their shadow will remain. Their story will haunt us forever. And so it did. Generations passed. Fleets were rebuilt. New wars began and old empires crumbled. But the legend of that single human warship never faded. In every corner of space, the tale endured. To some, it was a warning. Do not fight them, for they do not fear death. To others, it was inspiration. Be as the humans were. Stand when all hope is lost. Win, even in dying. And to humanity itself, scattered across colonies and hidden outposts, it was a call. A reminder of what they were, what they had always been, and what they would always be. A paradox. Unyielding. Unmatched. Impossible to conquer. In the end, no one remembered the names of the alien admirals who commanded the fleets. Their victories and their empires were dust. Forgotten by time, but the human ship, broken, burning, glorious in its last charge, lived forever. Somewhere, in every star system, someone whispered its story. Somewhere a child of some distant world dreamed of standing as the humans had stood. Somewhere a fleet commander read the tale before battle and felt his courage falter. The humans were gone, and yet they were everywhere. Far beyond the wreckage of that final stand, the void stretched on, endless and silent. Stars burned and died. Galaxies turned slowly in the dark, and still in the quiet places of the universe the legend lived. The paradox endured, and the galaxy would never forget.